Hello everyone, it's that time of the year again, and I always take a brief moment, if brief our videos can be considered, anyway compared to the usual, let's put it in this way, to address, of course, the best wishes for the most serene holidays, Christmas, New Year, the Epiphany, to all of you. Besides thanking you for yet another year gone by together on Schwerpunkt, which I think is, still part of a broader picture. All right, what we discuss here does have a meaning which definitely encompasses great aspects, at least of our interests, but that obviously spills over into our existential issues, right? You can argue that moral and physical burdens are pretty strong at a point, but it's exactly in these moments of rest, like in between, like some more stormy periods, that we can appreciate, in fact, even how important, like even those harsher moments really are for developing us into someone better, which seems always to be the broader point, right? I don't know about you. I hope that you have had like a good year. From last time we exchanged wishes, I had some issues in the last year, especially at the beginning and before, like going on. Every year you would like to say, okay, let's hope this year works, that there is nothing major to address. And even though I have a pretty easy life after all, I recall like things that happen are not really that good, but say now at least they have been settled. Just sometimes they leave a mark, they impress us, and in fact they make us reflect further on the whole picture, and so it is life in general. Like it's a way to handle oneself across this journey, which I must say is really amazing. Anyhow, that in spite of all, I really say that I'm a person who often complains about having to go there to do stuff. That's why I also have a kind of job that fortunately is not directed by anyone, because as I told you many times, not just Schwerpunkt, of course, but my more conventional activity, let's put it in this way, is actually not dependent on anyone. I don't have to work for anyone. I don't have deadlines except the ones I freely engage into. I have plenty of time to dedicate my work, and let's say that is going well. That is something I can't complain about. Also, Schwerpunkt this year was actually more rewarding than the usual. That I habitually update you now from this year or the last. I don't remember. I created this new formula. It is the seasonal backstage episodes. So recently, in November, we discussed the autumn situation, like from the YouTube analytics, etc. I don't want to transform, of course, this video of happy wishes on one about at least the technical aspects of the channel. But the most important milestone this year is that we managed essentially to have like some predictably positive expansion into like even several tens of subscribers a day, just based on a pre-calculated content organization, which means I will not reveal the full alchemy of my strategy, but that fundamentally the channel has started growing on its own without any sort of external help or for publicization, just on the basis of the content that YouTube has come to finally push to some degree. I know that the landscape constantly evolves on this site, and that indeed having a 24,000 subscribers channel after having uploaded a couple of thousands of videos is not this enormous result. But I've seen, let's say, other channels struggling in similar ways. At least you tend to know, of course, the ones that succeed the most. But I know, say, people who do also something much more qualitative in terms of at least of visual presentation, etc., like taking plenty of time to do that and still struggling like in the growth. And this may be just a time in the history of YouTube whereby there are such big channels that just algorithmically speaking, it's very difficult, aside from the huge number of people who constantly upload stuff on here, to simply merge or to do that very quickly. This would have been so much easier if I had started some year before, right? By this point, I would be one of the major channels, because just people at the time subscribed that easily to that also much simpler content. And I think that this is, say, more or less where I wanted to get, meaning that I remember in the past years I looked at channels that were more or less where I was in terms of pool and subscriptions, and I look at it now and say, okay, well, this is basically going by itself. Right? It's always been growing, it's always been expanding, reaching new people, and especially what I'm impressed by, and that's why I am mostly addressing this for thanking you, is the overwhelmingly positive feed that I receive. I guess it's kind of obvious. Most people that engage with a certain channel tend to do so because they like it, right? It's not like there isn't criticism or people can stand me sometimes, just, I don't know, the way I speak or the kind of format I produce or whatever. But let's say when I look back, especially in this time of the years, at the original reasons, say the primary reasons for which I would discuss history on the internet, that sometimes in the heat of of the schedule you tend to bypass, because you mostly look at the numbers, at the data and the analytics, is that I wanted to talk about history and objectively create some sort of shared, let's say, some sort of common ground, let's put it in this way, for people who really like history as much as I do, to confront, to reflect, to just talk about things that are a bit difficult to find conceptualized or just exposed or disclosed out here, in particular on YouTube, and pretty much anywhere else I can think of on the internet, except of course like but however some more heterogeneous and content not made by a single person like I can do in here. And I must say that I'm particularly satisfied. Again, I looked back at those channels and said, oh my god, this guy has 24,000 subscribers. I wish I had that. I would be fine, because it doesn't matter how slow this eventually grows, still I'm there. And so from this year, that sort of greater push began in a more intensive way alone. And so it simply means that as long as I keep making this content, the channel is on some sort of autopilot, right? And it can keep growing. Even though naturally it's still difficult to simply sort of share this, to convince people, if anything, this is worth watching, for many reasons. I don't blame people who think that, I don't know, this is too tough content to consume in terms of, say, low entertainment, low sort of visual sophistication, and just, especially if you're not particularly there, but with some sort of more advanced history, not even realizing whether I'm actually reliable or accurate in the absence of any other autonomous and objective mean of evaluation. However, this channel, I think, mirrors my character, my nature. I am sort of a bit like water, like, and I tend to absorb, like to be, to receive any kind of information around any movement, any perception, whatever, and then I'm seemingly just this low tone mode, but I'm relentless, and I tend to erode rock, even just with water. Plus, actually, I have a bit more of an aggressive, competitive side, as you know, but I don't think, like, yeah, aside from my polemical verve sometimes, my unbridled rants, for which I'm almost proverbial, really. I don't really have like this impacting more than much the sort of staying on track, staying focused on the actual topic, on the actual analysis, on the actual criticism. Because this is, I think, what Schwerpunkt has given me the most. Like, when I started this, most of it was being anxious to tell other people what I knew, right? What I had learned and what I thought could be interesting for them. And especially in that, from that ambitious, arrogant side, also wanted to teach a lesson to other people, to other YouTubers, content creators, that were, in my opinion, it's still largely, I believe today, do not really render a great service to history, but also to the audience, right? Because I would say this is, I think, the beauty of my channel, among the various downsides, is that, what I'm discussing here is for the sake of history proper. And you know that even though this channel may seem a bit more sort of esoteric or occult even, or that there is some sort of behind the scene plot being orchestrated, fundamental motivation that may be different from history. Actually, the entire point why I'm doing this, yes, of course, there is a motivation behind anything we do that goes beyond like any objectivity that we can even dream to achieve, but is actually history induced, right? It's, if I hadn't been able to learn this stuff and articulate them also by just explaining that on Schwerpunkt, this was incredibly useful to me, right? You know that I improved a lot over the years in terms of speech delivery, in terms of staying on topic, because I can't talk really for a long time, and I uploaded for a long time videos that were ramblier than these. But now, and I think this was true also since the beginning, to be fair, but this is even more pronounced at the moment, and I'm hopeful, in fact, for the future regarding the same aspect, are getting ever more like to the point and really concrete, right? Made of actual form other than just substance, about all the various topics that we can cover. I see this just with my own analysis capacity. Like, there were topics that if I had to address just a couple of years ago, I would have really not even known how to formulate or to talk for so long about. Today it's much easier because this learning and sort of speaking that I make exponentially increases my sort of the interconnection between the topics and my understanding of the same as a consequence. So it's ever easier for me just to talk and to do so pertinently. Many of you have began to tell me things like, but why don't you talk with different YouTubers? Like, some of you made very specific names. And this is definitely a useful way to increase a channel's publicity in many ways. I'm actually working a bit behind the scenes, because there is a behind the scenes, the backstage episodes are designed exactly for this kind of transparency, but there are also things that are behind the backstage even, that are not necessarily about cooperation. This year I made 2 interviews actually, and I know for sure because one video has been made, it's been uploaded on a channel, but I can only see it for now, and I was told it would have come out, like last week or something, but I understand that it's taking a bit more of time. It's not bad because the channel who's making it is also growing, so the bigger it is, the better it is for me in the end. Also made an interview in May that I don't know, the channel that the guy who owns the channel hasn't been uploading much ever since, so I presume that at least our conversation is an option for some upcoming content. And I think that this trend is just destined to rise, because especially as more people start accepting my premise as a channel, as a historian, like in this context, in this day and age, the more people are going to be interested in at least talking with me, and I'm always open to that. Like, I'm definitely not much of an extrovert. Like, if you look at my trait personality, you realize extroversion is like down to, I don't know, 30% or something. But I'm actually sociable whenever I'm exposed to people. I can be also very confrontational and pretty blunt in a not even just in a amicable way. Let's put it in this way. But the point is that I've never seen, actually, as I was saying in the beginning, like the feedback I received from YouTube tells me that there is really a lot of space for that. And besides this, behind the backstage, as I was saying before, there is some effort from my side. I still have to fully start it to actually bring my channel to the attention of very specific people that would probably, in fact, we're not talking historians mostly, but people, in fact, that seem to lack a bit of history in their bigger, say, podcasting activity, and that would likely find my content interesting. If anything, I follow a lot of American political commentaries. As many of you know, I hardly ever talk about these topics, and I usually have this sort of weird passive-aggressive references to populism or to anti-traditional imperial Catholic discipline and authority and charisma, etc. But never mind, that's not exactly what I'm aiming to, because, as I just said, I'm not really even seeking for that kind of confrontation or heated debate. I'm just temperamentally not interested. I don't find that interesting, rather than not actually wanting at some point to be extremely critical. But at that point I would do it just without, I would simply make videos of my own on the subject. And some of them I uploaded over the years, but they weren't my my war horse, let's put it in this way. They could become. I'm still, I must say, after all these years, I'm a bit puzzled still to realize that I don't exactly know what my followers specifically seek for from my channel. Meaning that I understand, yes, there is this shared historical interest. Many of you comment, also write me privately, ask me questions. Sometimes I answer through the question and answer series. That I think it's a very good tool. It brought quite interesting content thanks to your questions on the floor. But I still don't, aside from sort of the obvious reasons why somebody could be more or less interested in a given topic, that it's become very, very easy actually for me to understand especially in an individual sense. Like I discovered as a historian over the years that there's nothing easier than understanding somebody's worldview, political beliefs, sort of mental state, almost just by simple phrase about history, whatever they think about it or how they express themselves. And I don't want to scare you about that, because I am actually quite judgmental, but I do it mostly against those who deserve that. For the rest, I can be very, very cordial and at least understanding of, so without being triggered. That's the point. Most people know me as a disproportionately serious and cold person, which I'm not, telling the truth. But on the other side, it does seem like that, because when it comes to history, for me, that in this sense encompasses also politics, religion, etc. Well, I like to, of course, to contribute, but say that I like to fix certain points, because I detest superficiality. I detest sort of I don't even detest ignorance. If somebody doesn't know something, like they can't be my friend. Like in line of principle, I don't have anything against ignorance. I just don't like when people use ignorance as an excuse to just make up reality, and that's where things can actually get very, very bad. And for the rest, like in interpersonal life, I'm just not interested in those kind of people. Now, what I still don't understand, however, is how overall this works for you. Because, of course, you are you, I'm me, but I am the guy who has uploaded all this stuff. And aside from some of you that, of course, are very present, very consistent, you're here from years. I see you all the time in the comments. I appreciate very much your work. I appreciate very much what you do also to share my content on Twitter. There is a group of Schwerpunkt fanatics that repost everything I upload on X, and I think I have still a small reach, like 270 subscribers there, but it's, in fact, I see also from the stats, these external, like Facebook, Twitter, etc., are practically irrelevant to the actual YouTube views. So the most important thing is actually sharing as much as you can. What I don't understand, even from your own, like from the other side, like of the screen, and of the sort of the acoustics, what is, like, even from that individual perspective, that you think this is as a whole, right? And how you would like, not really Schwerpunkt to proceed, because I'm in charge here, and I decide what happens. Let's say what really interests me is how do you see the whole enterprise, of course, in terms of positive expectation, like meaning, especially after all the things that we began to discuss, I would presume, especially from the last year and a half or so, like when things, I think, started to go really well in terms of, or at least better than in any other time, like regarding also the topic choice, it was a very sound balance between probably also the topics covered in a strictly historical sense. Like there are many links now within the same Schwerpunkt, how complex this is. So I'm sure you must have gained, and I know it because some of you refer to this sometimes, because they hint to it sometimes, some greater sense of where this thing could go, right? And what we can collectively make about it, right? Because I don't plan to stop this. And of course, you may never know. I mean, at least I wouldn't like to do it. There may be reasons for which that would happen, but say as long as I'm here, as in this world, the intention is to continue it. I don't see. I know at some point, I don't know. I can tell you. I don't know if I'm still alive in 50 years, what this will be like, but I definitely derive an enormous advantage from this side. I mean, it's not the income, it's not like the opportunities, the connections, whatever. It's mostly how much I learned about history by doing this and considering that it impresses me, especially in relation to the fact that I actively research history from a professional point of view. So I'm actually very impressed by the effect that this activity has in informing my actual job, because to a degree I think I'm learning more from YouTube, from the content that I create here, than the articles that I write. Not that those are are less important. Actually, I believe that that's the place where I do my best, and it couldn't be otherwise. But let's say in order to write an article, you can. It takes a long time sometimes. This year, for example, I wrote an article in record time. It was just like, I don't know, how should be an article written for a top-tier scientific journal, like, I don't know, a 60, 80 pages long article, like 3 months. It was even that few, but in that case I knew well the topic. I could write it easily. In fact, with my publications, it's happening the same that you have been experiencing on Schwerpunkt to a degree, is to say I'm making ever better content in interest of time. With the articles, it's more evident because naturally they take less. They take much longer than a single video, but for that reason, like, you can measure how long they take, and the time is reducing and the quality is actually increasing. There is another article, for example, that took me said much longer. I was writing it last year in between. In fact, the last one and or at least the one I just discussed, because I started yet another one recently, and I'm finishing that even faster. And the one I published this year, and it was born like a divertissement in between. And so now it's actually more than 1 year that I've been writing it with pauses because of the others. That instead, like, is a hell of an article. I discovered something that I think nobody had ever, like, about a very famous medieval, very famous for the times and places of my research in that given time and place, source that I discovered some very strong imperial ideology baked into it, based on some theological principles, like that find parallels in in contemporary sources of the time, the very same years. I don't know how it's going to be received. I'm even going to publish it for. Still undecided, because I want to do it for the military of a big Western country, and it's more like, I don't know, a traditional religious, but it's also military historical content and about the Holy Roman Empire, and I don't know. That's something I would have never guessed to know. But if you ask me, like, how much did you learn in a quantitative sense, or even just by cumulation at that point, considering the speed in a qualitative one, compared to all the videos you made on Schwerpunkt for the extent of the time you were writing that article, the same extent of the days, well, there is no proportion. I know much more from Schwerpunkt now, right? It's different, right? Because you can't quite, I don't remember every single thing I make on Schwerpunkt at some point. I know what it is. I remember what the video says, but let's say it's not like I remember it like I was doing it on the same day, right? Actually, there's something interesting that you fully understand what this is about only when you start explaining to others, right? Because that's where you start sort of working more on it with your own mind. But there is no comparison. I'm learning much more from here than from any other activity that I thought could be the case. And I'm amazed at this, because one of the greatest problems I remember as becoming a historian in a strictly university or academic sense is that, the question is, where do you learn all this from? Like, how, it's easy to have lots of books and to learn a lot, right? To read a lot. But one thing is reading, and reading for just the sake of, say, knowing essentially what is written in the book. Another thing is having to look at single pieces of information, especially very elaborated one, and reflecting on it, making a video like lasting hours, trying to make sense of it and connecting it to all the things that you know. If you don't do this like I've been doing for years, which to some seems also pretty amazing to a degree, like many of you ask me, how is it possible, like what are you doing, whatever, how do you do it, even that's one of the most typical questions. The general point is always like because it's ever easier, right? Whatever I get from this, I am able to use it for the rest of the content through those, again, analytical, critical skills, and knowing essentially what I'm talking about without even, that was the old issue, like that I don't provide a full bibliography. Like if I have to refer to very specific information that you say, well, where did you take this? Like a datum, I have entire videos dedicated to sources specifically, and I often cite sources, but people somehow are puzzled by the way I make this content, because they seemingly don't want to accept that if you do this for years, it becomes eventually very easy to do it ever more and better, right? And in a more insightful and sort of comprehensive way. So that my content took on some interesting characteristics that I don't know how I could define, especially ever since we started covering more traditional history and religion, right? When we start looking properly at the doctrinal, theological side of the stories, etc. Like, I am aware of the fact that I'm departing from most, people's paths, right? It's not to say this stuff, again, is, I know it only by myself, again, it's plenty of works that talk about it, but it is true that I'm making a pretty strong effort for, like, or it's not even an effort actually, but a pretty strong work was put in this way, compounding essentially what I've learned from so many other different sources, so to actually adjust what other people already said, because I believe that they're actually wrong, and that my vision that I explain in every video is sort of more correct, without mentioning, of course, that most of the times I can agree with other scholars and I make their names, but mostly it is a level of detached, say, historiographically detached analysis about the actual core of the historical matter. And this is, again, what many people somehow are pretty de-habituated to, at least outside of Schwerpunkt. Again, from YouTube, I instead get an overwhelmingly positive feedback, for which I'm glad, right? I thank you in the sense that you have to give me that. I know just it works when I see it. Also because many of you really don't know what this channel, say, was about. Like up to, a couple of years, I think we quadrupled the number of subscribers. So 2 years ago seemed not such a long time ago after all, and many of you do not know all the before. I have everything uploaded or re-uploaded so that it can be only searched into some chronological fashion, but especially in the Historian playlist you have a kind of that, and essentially what this is all. You can easily reconstruct what this is all about. Always remember that you can search for my stuff. Like I get always an increasingly larger amount of people asking me things like, have you ever made a video on this? Well, if you search for it, like simple YouTube search, you will find that. Also from Google. I have, as you know, I told you many times, because this is becoming insane, right? That basically YouTube, I have a very high engagement rate and watch length. In fact, many people would think that smaller channels make necessarily less than the bigger ones. Not because you've habituated to the idea that the bigger ones make much shorter videos. I actually make fairly a lot in terms of watch length and more, because this is not cheap videos. Like, people watch them normally for well more than 10 minutes on average, even with the highest number of views. Like, so it doesn't get diluted. This is very positive. But I don't remember where I was going with this, but I mean, it's a type of the paradox that in spite of this, which is also understandable, because again, most people will not watch such long content to begin with, without knowing obviously what this is about. YouTube doesn't quite push my channel much. Like, the video recommendations are very low. This analytics, which is normal here, that basically tells you, like, normally it's your own subscribers activity, and then YouTube search, playlists, and then there's this advice videos that is quite important, because it basically shows how many new people you can practically find out there through YouTube's suggestion, and that is currently being surpassed by the external views. This is insane. Basically, and especially which are mostly made by Google searches, which means that essentially people want to know what my channel talks about, except YouTube doesn't show up my channel. Instead, people get to know my channel through more conventional ways of internet search. So again, the fastest you interact with a video, how longer your watch length is, and whatever it in terms of especially the first couple of days, it's going to largely determine whether that happens or not. And I realize that I have so many videos, and I also cover, say, take two similar topics, but at least there are some topics that recur. Like, so I have the impression that this may happen because many of my followers engage with so many different content that I already uploaded some time, and so they don't necessarily watch like the new one, right? But as I was saying at the beginning, the channel grows anyhow, and things have been going better, so I don't have really anything much to complain. But to make the long story short, I'm pretty satisfied by what Schwerpunkt does, and it's this time of the year that I sort of draw like the sums of this all, and I must say that I'm satisfied that there is something finally working, that regardless of all the issues that can exist on the internet and the current temper of the times, all the tragedies that go on, so all the bad news, all the negatives, all the downside of all that, there is, I think, still hope for having at least a place in some, so reaching some amount of people that can constitute some sort of community that is going to treasure at least certain kind of information that I share, that again can simply provide with as a premise with newly fresh discussions all the time. In fact, this is never going to end. Like, it may seem strange to many of you, but you would say, after 2,000 videos, have you, how close are you to finishing the topics to discuss? That's also probably, I don't really get that question very often. On the contrary, it seems that, like, many of you consider certain topics I make to be extremely niche, or any topic I make to be extremely niche. And from my perspective, actually, I don't think it's so niche. Like, it would be, there are channels actually that are much more specialistic in kind, and so if anything, it's the type of vibe maybe that they give to the content that makes it appear some sort of more relevant, right? I think that most of my content is, for example, understood to be as niche, because I talk about things that are simply not represented in a pop cultural sense, rather than being niche. Like, niche to me really, yes, it has to do with how choosy the audience is, so that can be a niche just created by that model. But I don't think it's a niche in the sense of historical relevance. I think actually the topics I cover, especially now when I see how much I uploaded on certain one of them, are meant just to rebalance, to readjust all the distortions that this pop bias has, maybe comes from, but also contributes to solidify sometimes. I see it just in the way even more famous topics are dealt with. There is just a way to approach them normally that is not just a simplified one, but also one that is not really the point of it all, I think, in a strictly historical, political, and moral sense. So what I do is meant at times to be niche. It's meant at times to be very targeted, like also because, again, I make so much stuff, so it's relatively easy to cover something that is slightly or apparently more in depth than what the average person thinks to be already something particularly historical in sort of technical sense. This is the part of the story. But going back on point, am I ever going to run out of content, topics, choices, videos? No. Right? This is impossible. I know that anything I can discuss is going, of course, to outlive me, just like all the books I have. Like, I will not be able to read in my lifetime all the general things I would like to do. Probably also all the videos that I thought of already that I wanted to do and I still haven't done, I will not be able to do. Right? So right now, I reached some relative balance level for which I'm able to do everything I need in time, even with some important reserve. And I must say that I'm generally satisfied with. In fact, I believe that in the future, in a way or another, things are going to get ever simpler. For example, the kind of images I use, I'm treasuring, I'm saving lots of time. It's incredibly easy for me to make these videos. They do not require an enormous preparation nor an enormous elaboration, as you understand, because the means are very simple. But let's say what really the channel is what I discuss in this moment, right, of the making, which is the only reason why I'm here. Like, again, talking history, as I was saying before. And as I was saying before, I'm really curious to hear from you how do you think you would like this to go, right? It's not just saying, I don't know, what kind of more favorite topic you would like me to cover, whatever, but say what kind of point is there in this all that seems to be, in fact, more than promising in perspective, right? Especially after all this time. I will take the occasion of this Christmas wishes to express more deeply my gratitude towards your support, because I understand that this is, again, a small channel. Even if it's going to grow, there is always going to be just an elite of subscribers, followers, who just have the possibility of regular watching, which maybe I have people I know that gradually, I mean, that have been following me, maybe at different times, like big gaps, but still, right, thinking, okay, I want to tune in again and hear where he's gone with this because I'm interested. That's, to me, let's say, it's not identical. I don't want to make favoritism. I'm not even saying that these, in fact, are either my favorite, not favorite, but it's not equal to follow me, like to watch a video every day or just commenting every day. It all depends on who you are, how you do it, what you get from it. So I'm not even aware of that. That's why I'm interested in knowing more from you. But I consider this still at least what I'm looking for, right? To give. Like it's there are people who mostly follow me in silence. That's also something that has always struck me. Many people also do not really have a YouTube account and watch me. Others just probably follow me for some reason. Then they find out that reason is maybe wrong. That's mostly content based, right? They think that if I ever made a video on a certain topic, it must be of that kind of group that I think, and they probably get lost into the immensity of the channel. I know that in that case they mostly stick to that kind of content that they tend to bond with more, but in that sense, that sort of more limiting view of Schwerpunkt that you can have. Another thing from my perspective that I want you to be aware of is the fact that I'm actually always very attentive towards the things I say in terms of general audience sensitivity, right? There is also a reason, for example, why I don't. It's not like I'm shying away from certain topics, right? But I could make this channel something else, right? If I simply wanted bigger views, I could have. Believe me, I do know how I could have made them, and maybe this would have even helped me, right? And who knows? Maybe like the channel can become lots of different things. At the time, it's not. In many ways, even after all this time, it's as if I were still experimenting. And it can't be otherwise. I have always to adjust, to calibrate the content according to not your wishes or needs or requests. Because, yeah, overall, if I interpret them and I think that they are right and deserving, of course I will do that, but not in the sense that you come to, again, to see how I proceed in that or have any sort of more straightforwardly clear understanding of how to influence the thing. But I'm also speaking to you because I have to make myself clear, right? This starts from my English to the actual perspective, the actual message that I want to convey, which is not easy, right? And it doesn't have to sound too whiny, for example, like saying, nobody knows about this, now I'm making videos about this, watch them because it's important. In many ways, that's how I feel sometimes, irrationally or emotionally, like not in the sense that I, really am making the content like as if I'm really wanting or asking you this. But most of the times, in fact, I am controlling the entire system here, the entire making, to, in fact, express myself in a more subtle and sort of hopefully wiser way that is really looking for the Schwerpunkt, right, of this great operation, right? In the past, I went as far as saying that there is some big I remember it was the Reddit discussion was very interesting. What the guy said something like he presents himself talking about me like I wouldn't say like he wasn't. I should search for it now, but it's not just like a simple YouTube channel. Yeah, exactly. Not a simple history channel. There is something bigger, right? I think he used the term of leader or something like. I will not deny that there is some idea that the content especially is meant to lead people, I am more of a withdrawn figure, right? I work in the shadows, where I'm nurtured by all this kind of contemplative, in fact, existence besides the active dimension that I must have at the same time. And sure, there is some depth, some layer that is meant to be initiated to properly, and this is probably going to be ever more the case in the future, because I think at this point you can't really separate the historical content from the general motivation for which you want to make people aware of the same historical reality. It may seem something strange, but this is what I've learned most. When you're younger, you think that there is a given amount of history that you're sort of want to share, sort of want to confront yourself with others because you want almost to confirm your own doubts, right? There is a phase in which you want to know from other people how it works. And then you go through certain things, and when you come out of them, you realize that now you are the one who is pioneer, who is ahead, right? Who has lost touch with sort of that simple learning group dimension, and that has some higher responsibility, some greater power even to exercise. So again, if I had applied myself in all these years for something that could simply make more views, probably would have succeeded. I don't think, honestly, now realizing how the site works, that would be something particularly challenging. So I'm surely thinking to do something similar in the future. I can't predict what 2025 will be. I just have some ideas on what kind of content. We're going probably to continue more. Every year there was something new, even though I hadn't planned that, right? So 2024 was different from 2023. It wasn't really wanted it in a general sense, but it also responded to certain wishes and demands that I wanted for the channel itself to thrive. And in this regard, I believe that 2025 can bring us mostly to that aforementioned connection, either with other channels, but because mostly with some, not necessarily history channels, right, but something a bit more ideological or political or religious, in the good sense of it all, right? You know, how we address these topics on Schwerpunkt, right? Sure is that I'm never going to abandon the historical side of the story. I mean, this content could be sort of more beneficial to bring attention to the channel, especially when, say, maybe it's not uploaded on Schwerpunkt itself, but at the same time it can help because I'm going to make historical content anyway, and this is always what it's going to be, right? And also because the more I learned history in this way, and the more I realized that you simply can't do without it. That whatever, say, there isn't a stopping point after which you bypass history and you simply go on your own with other ideas, right? There are some thinkers, some of the most famous of our times, through the internet, through YouTube, that sort of started from a specific ground that was mostly, in fact, their own, in a professional sense, and that essentially derailed towards some ever more fixed dimension, right? It's not like Schwerpunkt hasn't its points of reference, or that these are not sort of building up further, but they're widening, they're structuring, they're sort of going somewhere that just because it's historically grounded, that cannot but expand. to a level of depth. It's not simple refinement of something you simply knew, but it's just a further exponential, block laying that is going to significantly strengthen the entire structure over time, the value of its meaning. All right. There are, I would say this too, because I'm very. Do I follow what happens in the rest of the world, to begin with? Because yes, I'm with Rome, but am I oblivious of the rest of the world? Sometimes in interpersonal relations, it's difficult to make people understand exactly what I do in my life, because it's so different from what most people are habituated to that sometimes you feel as if, the way you're just being nice to them and you're making it, you explain them what you do, and you are sort of showing yourself, your capacity of handling situations, just getting yourself known over time, is not recognized, right? Imagine working for decades at something to the point that nobody even bonds with you because you're so alone out there, right? This is something in your own field, this is something I already highlighted. You would think that once you become some sort of an expert in your own field, legitimately my own, and I am, if anything, because I'm the only person who's studying the specifics of a specific time and place from a military point of view. Well, you will at least bond with people that by knowing more will actually be more likely to intersect with your own field of expertise. This is actually not true. On the contrary, the opposite is true. You are ever more alone, right? There is sometimes a bit of distrust, a bit of envy, especially if you are the younger researcher who's coming up with this stuff, and there is an obvious resistance sometimes here and there. But let's say, I hope really nobody will become my disciple in my own my own field, because I like to space in it freely. I don't want to be. That's why I'm also so reserved in real life, and way more open on Schwerpunkt about what I do. But the sense is that I'm really open to the world. Like I really follow a lot. I even though I'm very concentrated on what I do, like the impression is that this is this story, and sitting somewhere, being closed from the outside, not having a clue about what reality really is. I'm actually much more connected to what happens in the world. I think that most people who are much more directly, moving across it. As you know, I had my share of traveling in my life, to say the least, but it's not something that I actively seek to simply say, okay, well, I've been somewhere, so I know things. Like there is this increasingly cheap sort of fake culture or education or tourism that is actually nothing that even maybe an average person a couple of generations ago could simply have in a way more intense and fulfilling way. I've learned that you must learn both things. You should travel, but you should also know very well what you're visiting, especially before you get there. Sometimes if you have, of course, the opportunity of coming back, it can be even more educational to actually understand how powerful the effect of going somewhere that you didn't know before, but you know now after having actually visited and having acquired this awareness through a lot of studying, a lot of learning, can change your life. It can really alter the entire picture. And great part of the reason why I actually don't discuss other topics that could be even more related to today's times is that, from one side, of course, I'm not an expert in the respective fields that I could discuss. I have my own ideas, and especially in a critical sense, and I think that they're fairly well informed. At least were I to make it, I would know where to find sort of good backup, like further insight on certain topics before addressing them, of course. But at the same time, I think that if I took I'm actually very open about my political views. Just most people don't have. I don't discuss them often. But the times I do, I'm very straightforward. I don't really circle around the point. Just I make so many more videos about history that I realize that at the end of the day, it's better to modulate my historical criticism on the basis of, say, instrumentally, let's put it in this way, to the actual message that would pass were I to address other topics of other kind. And is this actually fair to do with history? Because history encompasses all of these things. So it's not about finding constants or, just, oh, look, this is how it was in the past and now it's repeating itself today. Or even drawing any other kind of parallelism. This is about essentially evaluating current events on the basis of what you know, like a thing of this kind could evolve on the basis of how you normally see this phenomena occurring by scale, which is a completely different side of the story. I know that most people stop, even this kind of definition would sound pretty much like, but so you're still comparing them to other things that happen. You're comparing them, not equating them, or even saying that they're actually that similar to begin with. In the sense that, I don't know, if you, for example, let's be honest, that people do not have a strategic culture. They can live through wars, they can even fight some, but they may not actually understand them, nor from a military, nor from a political point of view. And most people that I see in general do. I understand why they say what they say, and I don't know to which degree they're actually convinced of what they say. I know by experience that when you don't know something, you tend to sort of exercise the same ignorance by sort of making other supporting yourself with things that basically have nothing to do with the subject matter. But the general point is that they actually don't know. They actually don't understand war. They actually don't understand politics, and they don't even in what they think they could be understood by. The average person, for example, believes that understanding war is, I don't know, being a soldier on the front line. Understanding war for real, like not war as just a single person's experience or how, but war in the Clausewitzian sense of a political instrument, like, which is a concept, in fact, the average person can't arrive to, literally passes through that. So the entire sort of simplistic moral system deriving from that is, I don't know, if I went to a war, if I think that I've watched enough movies or played enough video games about war, I kind of more or less know or act as if I knew what war is, because that's what at the end of the day a soldier does, and I can sort of contextualize it into whatever I want, because fundamentally I do not know any better what happens around or above this. I don't have any idea of what civilization does, of what hierarchy does, of what authority does, politics does, what civic values do in this picture. So I will just essentially use this to say whatever I think about is happening is right. The same goes with politics. Politics is even more complicated because at least war can be handled by a specific chain of command. There is way of going is extremely difficult to handle, but that at least can be pinpointed. And that's what we do also just through the Clausewitzian theory and military history and this general strategic education. The point, however, is that politics encompasses, in fact, a much longer history. And that's where history really comes into play, and that's where the connection of this all, and that's why I think Schwerpunkt is at times discussing so much moral, personal, and cultural issues, because if you don't understand politics, if you don't understand history, you can't understand politics either, right? And people have their own, and maybe they understand actually this concept, but they mean it in a completely different way. That is to say, their own history, which is to say something that they do not have the palest idea of, even on the basis of sort of high school history programs or basic university manuals, is their own meter of measuring at the same level of, complexity of the individual guy, because that's literally what they're doing towards anything from their singular perspective. Explains it all, and so it's that people or that other and whatever, and they actually do not have any kind of political, education, cultural, critical capacity, because they don't, essentially, you know what they're talking about, right? These are the people who also invert the pyramid. They're the dualistic, superstitious, lesser people that basically believe that everybody who rules is evil, that everything is corrupt, and they aren't, of course, because everything must be, but they must be normal, according to them. It's that sociologically we know how that is actually not true, and they don't understand the concept. And again, I understand why, because we all pass through that. It's something you must learn. Like, you're not born with that. Instinctively, actually, you're trying to take these other directions, but only as long as you don't have any other means to understand the actual topic. And I can tell you, like, for me, the main turn was before Schwerpunkt. It was essentially my mid-20s, so not that far away at all, but still enough in time, like, to actually, when I started Schwerpunkt, I still had some concepts that today I wouldn't repeat, but not because of side choosing, but just in terms of actual historical analytical method, right? But it's at that point that I got it. It's at that point that I got also just the traditional meaning, because if you're not able to understand that there is something more important than yourself that has a value that makes it all worthwhile, of course, that sort of individualistic, deterministic, very often materialistic, technologistic, whatever, and also in fact relativistic system will be destroyed. And that's how it happens. It happens, you see, up to coming from that basis, you can pile up a lot of knowledge, because that's at the beginning how you essentially try to cope for that lack of knowledge you evidently perceive, and you're still researching because you want to know better how this works and you want to go ahead. And then when this reaches a critical mass that allows you to see it, it happens overnight. You can't unsee it anymore once you get it. And once you get it, it's because it's really like that. And so you will find yourself instinctively going back to that, but you will be reminded that it's the exact opposite of what you actually found out in a more rational, not rationalistic way, and that you realize you need that instinct, you need that power, those emotions, but just to go on the right track of wisdom, of reason, of actual providence, right, of control, of knowledge, that really you cannot achieve without education, without science, without an actual basis for what you're claiming. And this is, at the end of the day, why being a historian is so advantageous after all, and why, if you are a true historian, because history can be easily rigged, as we were just saying, the same way, by the sort of individual standpoint, you have this enormous advantage of always falling back on the evidence as a habit, right? It's something that people absolutely do not have. Especially do not have. I don't want to even say on a regular basis or on average, but simply like if you're not brought up into that culture, you will not make it. You can be an engineer, you can be an economist, you can be a philosopher. If you're not a historian, you will not understand, right? Because even when you have in a hard field, especially like you have to necessarily know the exact measures You have to be extremely precise. You know that there's only one way to make it work that is the right one. It still ends to that, right? Instead, history obliges you to confront like how you see the world, which is not just a tiny part of it, like building a bridge for how big and complex and difficult and impressive that is. It's just you have to make sense of the whole, and obviously since you can't quite do it to the fullest, you are at least continuously falling back on some data that you have to be able to discriminate, to browse, to use in ways that you don't really have the time for, like, doing so in an imperfect way, because you need it now, and you need to make it sense. You need it to make sense. This is not really an easy enterprise at all, but it's like in the Clausewitzian theory. You can't really control everything that is happening during a war, but in the measure in which you realize that also your foe is a human in the same condition, and that fundamentally what is happening to you is just also something you do gather some info from, you can simply improve by capitalizing on this knowledge and essentially becoming good at it, right? It's not like, I don't know, the simplest thing is perhaps motorial analogies, like when you learn to run, right? You're not really doing so on the basis of how do I need to run, or knowing how to ride a bicycle or a motorcycle. At some point you just do it. You do not really know. You couldn't explain so easily like how to do it. Like, there are some things that are obvious and self-evident, and this is true also in history. Of course, it's much more layered than something so, like, I don't know, driving a car or whatever, but it's still it's the way it's happening. You make it happen that you don't even need to write down to explain, because there is a level of skill learning that is just connaturated to you through your genes and through the way you work, that you will learn how to do that. Imagine to repeat that over and over again to the point you become a professional, I don't know, a NASCAR driver or something way more challenging, right? That's how it happens also with history. And so it's not at all that boring, inconsequential, dull, alleged repetition, mechanical repetition of citations or whatever. It's something much more exciting, much more important, that frankly, and this is also, I must say, the lesson I learned from Schwerpunkt, you don't really owe any explanation about to anyone, right? There is, in this scale, in this top scale of historical awareness, a level of authority that kicks in that is way more important than any other technicality or even formal historical referencing that then you're really expected to provide. You're really free to talk history, and if that makes sense, it makes sense, right? This is not about what does the average person do. Like, it's me too, because I'm envious, or I don't like that somebody gets things, and I want to act as if I look competent, whatever. The easy discriminant there is that person is trying to prove that to someone. The other doesn't, because no, it just works, right? That's why, for example, okay, let's not draw too strict parallelisms here, but in general, like, the person who is still seeking answers from especially the external rather than having the means of finding them, if they accept it, so because normally, like, that's the attitude, right? It's like, I want to find someone who reasons like me, or that says what I say, so that I can feel better about myself. That's immediately, like, it means you're an immature person. You're not able to stand on your own feet. And so it has nothing to do with that. Also, in fact, enforcing that simplified explanation and thinking that that's exactly how the thing works will backfire, right? The chaos, especially the people who tend to follow you eventually will tell you, oh, like if recently you find such gross oversimplification, I mean, not even oversimplification, like just some sort of downplaying of any complexity of notoriously complex issues, which doesn't mean an overcomplication of the same, but literally, like if there is a certain level of complexity in things that you want to appreciate, you should appreciate, it doesn't stop to like a phrase and then you don't even know how to make things work functionally, right? That's unfortunately what, however, most people want to hear, and they will sort of resonate with, exactly because they don't have power themselves, they don't know essentially how to use this tool themselves, and they will just think that it's just a simple thing that they think themselves that is the right thing to go. So denying, perfectly knowing that it's instead denying entirely a reality of complexity that others can harness and that they're simply envious of, right? And this is why, also going back to the topic of our video today that sort of escalated towards different directions, Christmas should be a time in which you're truly given this quite unique moment of reflection about yourself, mostly about the connection between you and the truth that is essentially posing yourself in front of the realization that you can't escape, you can't avoid to confront yourself with reality by using a conspiracy theory, because that only means that you are unburdening yourself, even if that were true, from the actual responsibility of eventually doing anything about it. Because if most of these ideas were true, like, you should do something about that. Like, if you're constantly repeating them, you should at least find ways to fix it. And it doesn't. You're actually saying that you're under, and basically you're doing really nothing to change that. I think that when the sun rises again, and you understand that the darkness will not prevail, and that yet this is somehow a closely fought clash that is going to repeat itself over and over, with the possibility that in the end things will be different, and that you are essentially, as providentially, the one who can change things as well. You realize that the true wisdom lies in making that sacrifice that life entails. Right? Life is not there to show you that things are going to go well. Right? I think we are all pretty sort of obviously aware of reality to know that that's not the case. And you must provide with an answer to that. This is not a moment to compliment yourself. It's a moment in which you should, on the contrary, feel grateful. That's a word we should use much more often. We should at least bear in mind and to inform our life, because what we have is just finite. In many ways, it did not depend on us, or at least if it does so at a level that is inherent us, and it's not really. It's something, in fact, we've mostly been trained not to understand anymore. It lays in, if anything, a potential that, however, dies out over time. So you're not eternal, you're not infinite, and we've seen in tradition what sort of how things are much less comforting than they actually sound in other circumstances, in some sort of pop cultural acquisitions or distortions or sort of weird attenuations that nobody really knows. Like, just I know that people are becoming ever weaker, and so they need to be ever more comforted, but this actually means to make them further weaker, and so more fragile and not able to stand their ground anymore. That's what you see of what we're talking about right now. So Christmas actually shows you that, the miracle of life is within all of us, and that the potential you can achieve, that is the conquest of the world, through a life of sacrifice, self-sacrifice, and of deep contemplation as well as action, is the only way you can come out of the swamp, so to say, right? Which is actually even much more difficult thing for, say, the subject matter, this metaphor, and that in fact may not be enough, may not actually be even remotely close to enough, and for which we also have to accept the value of tradition, of the truly true meaning of Catholicism, which, as you always know by this point, I will bring up in the actual issue, like, as people do not know what Catholic means. They never did at large. We never taught that. People think it means something that, and they don't even know why they think something that, in fact, doesn't even explain what they think. Like, this is another problem. Like, words, we stop thinking why we use words and what meaning they have, how they came about, why we started using them to begin with. Everything is pure convention. Everything is devoid of meaning. This is essentially how you've been brought up. And no wonder the world is the one it is. And there is no doubt. But meaning is alive. And the meaning is always there. And the meaning lays within you. Not in the sense that you're making up a meaning out of your own whim, but because your soul reflects the universe. And so there is a level of consonance that can simply change everything between the universe and your soul, encompassing the whole, right? That is exactly what our ancestors believed, and we technically still believe it, as if we only made the minimum effort to understand the true meaning of our religion. It's difficult to talk about Christmas. We should make an entirely different video. Maybe this could have been the one for that. But say I would like to do something, of course, more theologically precise. At least what I'm discussing here, they are already big topics in themselves, and that's why I can't simply cover them so simply in such videos. But when you think of Christmas, think of the grace that you're given just to have what you have, right? If you starting from something so simple, like, think about this time of the year, right? I'm sure some people will detest this time of the year, maybe not for the holidays, but for, I don't know, for life, for things that happen in sometimes maybe during the same period, or that maybe do not really feel it, like they have lost that sense of joy and wonder, and in fact of gratefulness and thankfulness towards what we have. But at the same time, even if that were the case, you too well know that part of the reason it's because you have lost that sense of joy and wonder. You may think that that's something transient, that again, just maybe a kid believes that, and that fundamentally you age and things change. This happens with many things in life. It happens with love as well. There is some time in life maybe you believe that love is just when you were a kid and you were emotional, and so you're in love with it, you're in love, and then you love again, and you realize that it was there all before. And I think that religious experience, that in my opinion does get down to love, at least I'm particularly inclined to that sort of more sentimental side of the story by my own nature. I believe that different people find different paths, at least to the same truth, and I may be leaning towards this, but love is a great explanation, because actually this does encompass a level of imperium people are often unaware of, and that same kind of expansion of the seed within the heart that can encompass the whole universe. This is exactly what the Indo-European religion believed, for example, and that very few are aware of today. And I would say that this time of the year is about this law, right? It's more about this familiar connection than anything else, right? In Easter, we celebrate life, especially the triumph of life over death, right? Because that's really the most important moment, rather than the natural birth per se. But the natural birth per se would not be meaningful if it didn't carry a spirit. And if the family wasn't a whole spirit, that in this sense was even more important than the sum of the individuals. And that's what the church is as well, what tradition also pre-existed the same Christian reality. And we know, we've seen this in many videos, and we'll keep talking about this, is how that Catholic tradition predates Christianity and informs it further for the meanings that we still share today, for particular reasons, because, again, mankind does change over time. It doesn't remain the same, actually, and in much more concrete ways than you think. Like, it's not to say, oh, people believed differently at the time. No. People were actually different, also in a physical sense. And not in physical, it doesn't mean material only, at least, or at least whatever we think matter may be, because it can never be separated from the spirit. We're not living in a dualistic heresy here. But the point being that Christmas really shows you that level of childlike wonder, because it celebrates the birth of the rebirth of God, like the triumph itself of life over death as a nomen, as a prediction, right? As something that is going to be fulfilled by the Evangelion itself, that is bringing you that is happening under a terribly heavy degree of threat, of exposure, of difficulty, and that carries within itself thus the world entire. And we've all been through that, right? And so if you feel lost in time and you think that Christmas after all does not feel like it did anymore, just know that you're meant to be on that track, that the reason why you were like that before is not the fact that you're different today. You're the same, right? There is something that remains the same, and it's not something that you can separate from the wall. But what changes exactly because you're meant to fulfill the promise that incredible miracle of life manifested itself into this enormous, at the end of the day, consequence of law, in any way you want to see it. And when you understand, of course, that there is a sacrificial nature in this all, and that essentially we tend to focus much, why are people suffering also in many ways? Because they are acknowledged, they are acquainted with the obvious evidence of death, of mortality, of suffering, right? And it's really tough because there is nothing romantic or, I don't know, fulfilling or, let's say, desirable about it, right? The self-sacrifice is not a matter of idealizing what that consists in. And just if you, I hope not, but if you've ever been faced with a illness on yourself, and so one thing is, cynically thinking about the suffering of other people and saying, well, okay, I feel sorry for them, but still being fine on your own. It's actually a very vile feeling. I mean, I personally, out of conscience, I feel that, and I feel incredibly uncomfortable because of that. And that alone, conscience-wise, should spur you to be that better person. And to make you understand how what matters there is how much you actually do in the process, and how much the ultimate sacrifice is meant to bypass the same mortality, is essentially giving a meaning to your action that is able to even triumph over death, which is what we actually believe in. And we celebrate on, again, you can say on this, this will be uploaded on the 24th, because that's normally what I do, but also on Christmas. It's not just about Easter. This is, of course, about Christ's life in general. And it couldn't be otherwise, couldn't be disconnected from these passages. And of course, this the strongest, you see the contrast between life and death, and the more miraculous, the more incredible, the more joyful the triumph of this life over death really is. And this is not to say that, like we have talked really a lot about the Catholic tradition, so I'm not going to descend again, especially in the issue of works on, salvation and how you can transcend your own mortality, because in part that's the big deal that the same Christianity affirmed itself to. You can't say to resolve, because if that had been the case, we would have not been given a choice. And this choice has always been on us. Like, we don't live in a sort of an experimental cage to see what we do, otherwise, we're done for. Like, that's also what many people, unfortunately, see religion like. They don't understand that every kind of mortality is created by us, right? And not just by some, fantasy guys in the Bible that committed some sin against, some authority that we don't even know why that, he created them to begin with. No, we are the same people. We are the ones who are actively, in this very moment, existing at such lower standards of conviction, of belief, of faith, that we cause our own mortality. Our aging is a product of our own constant, active sin. Right? It's not really something that is happening to us because of some divine retribution. It's just us simply fading away, not being able to go back to what once belonged to us by merit. Right? And this makes it all more painful. And yet, this is why the constant celebration of life will fix it. There is something almost, again, if you don't believe it, if you've never approached religion, if you've never understood why this is the big deal, right? You at least know what that meant at some point. You may have actually had such a terrible, I really hope not, because I think these are very liminal cases. But even in those, I doubt really that there is a person who has never felt in different ways that the joy of redemption, the joy of forgiveness, the joy of love, the preciousness of such chance that you are given, and how sort of uplifting and exciting and really otherworldly this really feels like. I think this is incredibly important as a shared human experience to reflect upon, because it's at the end of the day all what you really want down the line. I mean, we do want to make sense of the world, and we encounter people, we're going to create problems, we're going to fight with them, there's going to be a sense of division that is indeed functional to the world. It doesn't stem from, it does stem from sin, but more like a consequence of sin. It's not sin per se, right? Maybe it can bring to other sin, it can bring to other misunderstanding, can bring to other problem, but at the end of the day, right, the ultimate mover, the ultimate motivation, the ultimate reason for which you could simply sit down at a table and make a joke, right, and trying to know one another. Some people are broken, right? There's some people that really do not work as they're supposed to. But even in that case, I don't think that there is actually any real boundary to simply prevent this power to. There isn't, like, just theologically speaking. I'm making it a case, like, I think, like, in an empirical sense, but not in the sense that we don't know religiously that, or even just scientifically, that is the case, right? So the meaning of Christmas goes beyond. Here I normally use this beautiful pictures. I try to make things more familiar with you, because I know that at the end of the day you do like me every once in a while being more, I wouldn't say human, because we all know that that's not really exactly what we're seeking for here, but it's at least more relatable, more personal, a bit closer, like something that tells you that I get it, all right? And yeah, we do, and yet there is a general sense that this is such an important deal for all of us, and that whatever we're going through, there is this common spirit, this common sense that shines through even in the moment of greatest issues. And believe me, I think in this, this is not the Hollywoodian happy ending kind of belief. This is more like a last stand fight kind of attitude towards it, but such an emboldening one, not one dictated by fear, not one that at least is scared to confront itself with fear itself. There is something beautiful in being able to stand our ground and to cry out loud what we really believe in. And actually, I would thinking it's worth dying for it. And I do believe that this does transpose itself into that domain that we also see in on Earth. Like, this is the entire point of the imperial Catholic tradition. It's not, as many people believe, like some sort of opposition to the actual teaching. Not even making of course, I could talk about the Christian teaching specifically, but it's not just about that. In a historical sense, especially in a pre-Christian sense, that again is fully with one, even though again this is also what people don't like to hear sometimes, but so it is, and at least I devote my channel often to the explanation of this concept. Again, nevertheless, I believe that everything that we're trying to achieve in the world starts from that basis. Some of you has made some question regarding the self-sacrifice in Holy Combat and how it works and how it gets down. I will answer that because I think it's a very interesting question that we should start sort of discussing even more copiously than we ever did, because also I'm bringing up many more sort of contemporary warfare content, may even relate with that. Nevertheless, this is the beauty of it all. There is suspended time in the year. This is unique, right? This is, sadly, if you think about how limited it is, but it is because it's that important. It is because it defines the entire sort of most important cycle within our lives in a conventional sense. It is meant to make us believe and to reflect and to see how relevant after all it is, how much we're looking forward for it, and why. What is in its meaning that really matters, right? Then and that is part of a path, and that's why Christmas is sort of the most relatable. It's not just because as a child that's the thing you await for the most, and when you age up you understand why Easter is really of course the bigger deal. But you see, as we were saying before, it's all consequential. One wouldn't make sense without the other. And I think it's important to stress that sense of self-sacrifice and victory of life over death is so more meaningful for more adult people. But if you feel stuck and if you feel in that mode by which you're really in the darkness, right? Easter is the spring. Easter is the new cycle. There is optimism in the air. Anyway, it's not something that you can simply disconnect from the same seasonal cycles, right? It's just like other times, other festivities. We talked about them, and sometimes even reading making a review of some books in topic are connected with this general mood. But it's no surprise, in fact, that Christmas comes, as we were saying before, also for the Chinese, that sort of more threatening moment, in that darker, colder, sort of, in fact, more chthonic. Like, think about the manger, think about the animals as well, but still, that is the proof that the greatest love and the greatest good and the greatest life can find its way in its very beginning exactly in that, and that can transfigure, even in the anticipation of the ultimate sacrifice, the present. Everybody understands that this is positive. I don't know about you, but I always felt very much for the animals in the crib because of their of the fact that, I don't know, if you like animals, you have pets, or just familiarize with them occasionally, like what's the difference there, like why we like animals in general. It's and why we're also so brutal with them at the same time, because from one side they just feel our same emotions, so they're so relatable and they're innocent in that level of constructed malice that we have as humans, except this time stems from an actual quality that can go wrong, whereas animals are just incapable of achieving more than much, right? An animal will not understand certain things, doesn't matter how hard you teach them. And so there is some limit that you must sort of understand in that hierarchical form, but you can't separate from the sort of more primal and originary meaning that there's something positive about birth, that even like in the crib, in the nativity, that is easy to witness, is shown, like the animals participate to it, they're happy, they feel that something new and good and great has happened, something marvelous, a miracle, right? A miracle of life, of family, of love, right? And that's the single most important element that I think at the core really constitutes the community. If you think about the empire, at the bottom of it, it's really that nucleus that makes it all. And there is a Trinitarian aspect that we're marked by, in as much as we don't just witness here the Father, that is, the Son, at the same time that is able to sacrifice so much. Even the figure of Joseph, in strictly doctrinal terms, is incredibly relevant, because that's a hell of a sacrifice as well. I will not digress in the direction of, again, how Mary is full of grace, and of course she is a virgin mother, because some people will contend things, but this is not the point. The point is that because of the Holy Ghost, God is one and tri, right? And this is the most perfect manifestation that you can have, and it starts at that lowest possible level, right? And then, of course, like in Christ's life, this continues to an important extent. That's not what we're discussing today. What I mean is that you can think of this scene in any kind of situation you find yourself in your life, because it's the most basic, it's the most primal, the most original. You may think that you're ever more distant from that spring of life, that life is difficult, that you will feel the burden morally, physically, as we were saying in the beginning, and it is really something. I, for example, do feel that a lot, and it's hard to go on. It's hard to think about so many things and fearing, but at the same time, it's still up to us to make it happen. So it won't help us, right? You can see that as a pressure that will not help you fulfilling the ultimate mission. But at the same time, Christ showed us the most direct way to it, something that may not be attainable in a true sense by any other man, but it's technically possible, and that therefore we should never stop sort of chasing, because we can't make it but good in the right direction. Yeah. Now, there would be like there are other aspects of that, because we do bear like the Trinity in our baptism. We do, again, many people think otherwise. I'm not even talking about different confession. I'm really thinking of even people who, for example, are not baptized. That's something apparent. That's where I come from. This is not normal at all. The norm, especially in Europe, is that practically everybody of my generation, at least, is baptized, even when you wouldn't get literally any other kind of Christian education, or you wouldn't even believe in it by yourself. So I know it's easy, and as say, I don't, as you know, I don't talk much about my religious life. I don't think it's fitting in this context, or useful for that matter. But I would like to address, because we're all feeling our shortcomings. I would say that, we would like all to be perfect. In many ways, what the Catholic tradition does is continuing a tradition that predates, let's say, in Christianity. And this is what literally, many people think, oh no, this is now Schwerpunkt saying that Catholicism existed before Christianity. Well, I've never heard a priest literally saying that, even though that would actually be the case, because if you're talking tradition, they are talking something, well, it's not equivalent to Catholicism in a linguistic sense, or etymological one, but the sense is the same. Is that the point of preserving a community, actually a communion within a community, and this connection with God, it's something that, of course, the world was experiencing before Christianity, and how right it was. And so when you think about it, realize, of course, also what tradition is within Christianity. And since we all know that we could do more, even just in a formal sense, and that this could and would help us, because it's important to be virtuous, right? Many people say that there is inherently nothing wrong with me. If you're mortal, if you're a human being, like, there is something inherently wrong with you. That's not to say that you suck just per se. It's a you suck knowing what you can be, and you aren't. And this is exactly the problem that you feel, right? So you can't feel at the same time that you're virtuous, as if you had full virtue. What that even is? Like, are you God yourself? Evidently not. But there is discipline, and this is something that I learned more from my military historical studies than from my religious ones, which, however, did culminate in this meaning, obviously enough. That is to say, there are ways you can bring yourself into this. There is no shame in being outside of the group. There is no shame in not having received the sacraments. There is no shame even in not being baptized. Not just you can do it, you should do it because it's beautiful and it's just something that remains with you forever in such an empowering way that only at that point it would make you think why we do it, right? I really give it, it's a cut, right? You will find, of course, I'm not talking because I baptize in an adult age, but there are other steps that you do when you are aware that really make you experience how difficult it seems at the beginning, how many excuses you would make because you don't even see the point of it. But it's only after you have done it that you understand what it is. And this is really true in any kind of initiatory ritual, that there is an element of sacrifice and an element of loss, something you have to leave behind. And it is in many ways, in an esoteric sense, truly the meaning of life over death. It's truly your own ability to regenerate yourself. It's truly the capacity of seeing how worthier you are when you fully understand what your potential is, right? So we should all take that path. It never ends. Believe me, it's not like you arrive at a point and just check those boxes and you do it. I presume that in fact every person can follow that path, even in an autonomous way, but it's more difficult. And it's not because it's you in any sort of peculiar sense. Like in front of God, it is actually a problem to be human, right? Because we just explained why we are in that condition. But in a human sense, since especially that's what the reason is, you're most like fear of judgment, whatever, that's the thing that concerns you. You shouldn't be concerned. You shouldn't be doing it also because somebody else forces you or because other people do it. You should do it in order to understand how you come closer to the truth by that passage, by that path, right? And it's also, I say, once you have done it, it's tough, or at least it's tougher because you understand how much it entails and how much you should be up to. But it's also so rewarding because now you know how much you can handle, and you will handle more at every given chance, and you will do so by really understanding the meaning of it all in a way that you never thought it was even possible, really. And I think that this is so relevant in a world like ours, because if you feel like the world is falling apart, this is not just a way to actually make it more stable, but to actually also preserve a great part of what we already have. There's this notion that you should basically tear everything down just because now you feel temporarily dispirited because you're not able to succeed in an incredibly easy game, right? That's childish by definition. A true man does a completely different thing. A true man knows that, of course, what happened in the past could never be fully replicated or identically replicated, but knows that what still stands must be the basis for further build-up. I mean, look at our Middle Ages, how much we talked about what the West was able to achieve on the base of Rome, and through Rome, as Rome, during the Middle Ages. If one does not understand that principle, we'll always see essentially history as a black hole of nothingness, that we will have people thinking that, everything is, backward. And how do you think that, again, people stop believing in God, and why? It's exactly because they stop doing anything for themselves. It's because they hate standards because they can't achieve them anymore. They don't know what it is, and they suffer from it. And so they even twist history. That's what would care about also in Schwerpunkt in many ways, to fit their own, very poor and ever weaker narrative that at some point will be crushed by reality. But it may be too late for them to do anything about it in their lives. And so Christmas has so many meanings. It's not just the most straightforward, at least it's stemming from the most fundamental. So many others depart. So this video is very long. Of course, I don't know who's going to listen to it, because I will be uploading it on Christmas Eve, so I doubt you're going to spend it listening to it. But in any case, that's why I want to wish you really a happy Christmas from, I can't say where, from Europe, you know that at least. But in order to stress that we all come from the same place, really in a greater sense, right? Not just Earth as a whole, or the universe in a spatial sense. It's really something greater than that, right? And the entire point of this all is for you to realize how lucky you are to be living in a world, broadly meant, that allows you to exist and to have this opportunity to live your life, this is the most difficult part of the story, because it sounds so hypocritical. I know that, like, unless you have sacrificed yourself fully in toto, you can't say, well, oh my god, it's so beautiful to live, or I was so lucky, or whatever. Life, other people go through things that we can't even imagine how hard they are, where people were dying every day, actively pursuing a greater goal than anyone, that most of us, let's say, will never even come close to understanding their lives. And that's how hard the test is. But it's automatic. The hardest it is, the more rewarding it is. And it may seem like we're too attached to our earthly life, which is probably the case, and that's why we feel so terrorized at the idea that it could be, that we could lose it with such ease. But learn also from your fellow men, because that's what we do as historians, evidently, especially when we talk about military history. And let's realize that this is not a joke. This is not a video game. It's not a projection. This is what happens for real, in the most real, in the hyper real sense. And you can't unsee it. You can't act as if it wasn't a thing, or it didn't matter, or you can simply bypass it. Right? So I hope that Christmas really brings you this enlightenment, that you may share this with the people you love, with your family, with anyone who really shares this bond with you that is otherworldly. And this is what we remember. And then there is, I must confess, this includes everything in it, right? Even here I inserted some pictures of Christmas meals and decorations and candles, etc. That's cool as well, as long as it can evoke you like the truest, deepest reason of why this is right, and that's why we enjoy this festivity in a way that is objectively unique, like all festivities, but also with a degree of relevance that can be everything but downplayed, right? I would like to engage more in sort of theological concepts and other ideas, but in general, I also think that we're doing fairly well with our channel on the front of history of religion. We just have to widen it a bit. In any case, I will likely make a little Christmas video as well with some music as usual, so we'll see each other in a couple of days, because I'm not going anywhere even when I'm busy. I have some videos that I have already prepared, so you don't see that, but it happens. It's a real story. And so I will not conclude like in the other videos. I just really heartily wish you a happy Christmas to you, your families. I hope you're going to spend a terrific time, and I thank you enormously for this communion that we have on Schwerpunkt, and I hope we'll have added something to your personal background that you can sort of enjoy, share, and say profit of during your holidays, thinking that maybe this adds to the completion of something bigger. That's if I manage to do that in any way. That also I can say that my Christmas will be even more beautiful than the one I already love. Right. So thank you again. Merry Christmas, and see you next time.